Today we're going to be talking about functional groups. Functional groups are groups that are attached to organic molecules. And if you remember, the organic molecules they are considered to be organic because they contain carbon. So we're talking about things like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, those types of things. And those carbon atoms are going to be arranged in either a short or long carbon chain or sometimes in a carbon ring. And like I said, we're going to find these functional groups attached to these carbon structures. A functional group is just a group of atoms that are going to be in one way or another attached to that carbon skeleton, and they are going to help the molecules in the chemical reactions. That's where these functional groups really shine. The functional groups tend to be the ones that are going to be polar. Remember, polar molecules have that polarity. They're going to tend to be hydrophilic. That means they're going to be soluble in water, and that solubility really is necessary for these chemical reactions because most life is going to be water-based. We're going to have water to carry out these chemical reactions, which is one of the many reasons why our cells need water, because without water they get that dehydration, and so many chemical reactions are dependent on water. So like I said, these functional groups, the fact that they're hydrophilic, which means they like water, is really important in allowing these chemical reactions to take place. So we're going to take a look at all of the different functional groups, the major ones that we find attached to these carbon skeletons. The first group that we're going to look at is called the hydroxyl group. And the hydroxyl group is very simple. It is an oxygen bonded to a hydrogen. So we're talking about something just an O and an H, an oxygen bonded to a hydrogen. Compounds that contain these types of functional groups are referred to as alcohols. Okay, so there, again, a lot of different ways we can wind up with this. Hydroxyl groups are especially important in biochemistry due to the fact that they form hydrogen bonds. Okay, and so when you form a hydrogen bond, they're going to contain both lone pairs of electrons and a weakly acidic proton. These hydroxyl groups are also able to form hydrogen bonds with water. And again, just having that water there allows for these chemical reactions to take place. Carbohydrates are one of the organic compounds where we see these, because of the presence of this hydroxyl group, carbohydrates are extremely soluble in water, right? So when we consume carbohydrates, that's one of the reasons why our body breaks them down so easily and so readily, is because they're so soluble. Once they get inside our systems, they can be easily broken down, and then we can get that energy out of them quite a bit quicker than we can, say, the lipids or the proteins, so it doesn't have to work. The second group we want to take a look at is called the carbonyl group. The carbonyl group is a carbon atom which is double bonded to oxygen. So the two lines there indicating that that is a double bond. So we have carbon double bonded to oxygen. If the carbon is the last in the skeleton, then it is referred to as an aldehyde. If the carbon is just somewhere within the chain, then it is referred to as a ketone. And those are just terms that we use to identify the different types of carbonyl groups. These structures, the carbonyl groups, are found in a lot of aromatic compounds, so that helps contribute to smell and taste. That's where we would find a lot of these structures. This structure right here, the carbon double bonded to oxygen, this is known as the carbonyl group. Okay, it is a functional group. And then members of this group are called carbonyl compounds. So there's a lot of different carbonyl compounds. Formaldehyde, which is used in preservation, that is one of the more common carbon compounds. But again, this is the group itself, and then there's a lot of derivatives of that which make up the carbonyl compounds. The next group I want to take a look at is the carboxyl group. Okay, the carboxyl group is a carbon which is double bonded to an oxygen, so it's similar to this, but it is also bonded to a hydroxyl group. Okay, so what you wind up there is you have a carbon atom, and then it's going to be double bonded to an oxygen, and it also has a bond with an oxygen and a hydrogen, which is a hydroxyl group. Okay, so we'll kind of differentiate these. Okay, so we've got our carbon double bonded to oxygen, and then a bond with the hydroxyl group. And again, that is called the carboxyl group, one of the other functional groups. This group here, they act as an acid because they're going to be contributing hydrogen ions to be ionized. Compounds that contain a carboxyl group are referred to as carboxylic acids. Okay. Carboxylic acids are found in things like acetic acid, and they're also found in amino acids, which we use as the building blocks for proteins. So again, all of these are pretty important, but just due to their nature, you're going to see a lot of these due to the fact that we have so many amino acids that we're using to build thousands of different proteins in our body to carry out all of those functions. Another one we're going to see a lot of, and similar, is the amino group. An amino group is nitrogen bonded to 2 hydrogen atoms and a carbon skeleton. So these can get a little bit tricky, but in an amino group, that's an amino that you're going to see, that's something that you see in an amino acid, right? So when we talk about the structure of an amino acid, you have a carboxyl group bonded to carbon, bonded to an amino group, and then they have that R group, which is the side chain. So the way this is going to look, though, is we're going to have a carbon here, okay, bonded to a nitrogen, okay? So we've got a carbon bonded to a nitrogen, and from that nitrogen, that's going to be bonded to 1 hydrogen, 2 hydrogens, okay? So this is our amino group, a nitrogen bonded to 2 hydrogens and a carbon skeleton. And again, if we were to extend this further, if we wanted to make an amino acid, we'd have a hydrogen here, we'd have our R group here, and then we would have our carboxyl group over here, which is going to give us an oxygen and a hydrogen. Okay. So again, but just the amino group is this little group of guys right here. Okay, carbon skeleton, nitrogen, 2 hydrogens. These are going to actually act in the reverse of the carboxyl group. They're going to act as a base, and instead of donating that hydrogen, they're going to pick up the hydrogen ions. Compounds that contain these groups are called amines. Again, amino acids contain both the amino group and the carboxyl group. Okay, so that's what, and again, when you throw in the R group, then you have a complete amino acid. Another group is referred to or is called the phosphate group, and this is a phosphorus atom which is bonded to 4 oxygen atoms. So you're going to have a phosphorus and you're going to have an oxygen. You may have a double bond with an oxygen, another oxygen, and another oxygen. Okay, and that's called the phosphate group. Phosphate groups are usually ionized and attached to a carbon skeleton by the oxygen. The compounds with this are called organic phosphates, and they're involved in a lot of things like energy transfer, which we see in ATP, right? Adenosine triphosphate. That phosphate group is going to be added to the adenosine diphosphate molecule to create the ATP molecule, and then when the cell needs energy, it's going to break off or break that bond between the second and third phosphate group, which releases energy. So these phosphate groups are incredibly important in all cellular activity, because any type of cellular activity that requires energy is going to need that ATP molecule, right? That is the cell's energy currency. It's how we do active transport. It's how we do muscle contractions. So again, just another reason why this particular group, and again, all of these groups are important, and they all serve a really important role within cells. Another group that falls into the functional group are the methyl groups. The methyl groups are a carbon bonded to 3 hydrogens. Carbon, a hydrogen, and a hydrogen there. Okay, and that is the methyl group. These compounds are referred to as methylated compounds. When a methyl group is added to DNA, it can affect the expression of a gene. So that's a pretty big thing. Basically what we're talking about there is it's going to affect the way that gene gets expressed as a trait. So that's a pretty big thing. Both male and female hormones vary in just 2 functional groups, one of those being the methyl group, okay? And that affects the different actions of the molecule. Again, male and female hormones like estrogen and testosterone, they're very, very similar structures, right? They're built from lipids. But including these methyl groups is going to change how they're expressed and therefore change the way it's observed in physical traits of that organism. So those are all of the main functional groups that we see. Again, all of these functional groups are attached to carbon and play a really important role in the cellular activity and day-to-day life. I'll see you next time.